All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a really wild story. How just two people managed to get control of one of California's most precious resources. We're talking about water.
So let's start with a number, 3.8 million. That's how many people live in the city of Los Angeles. Just try to imagine all the water that many people need, every single day.
Okay, now hold that thought, because here's the kicker. Two people, just two, a billionaire couple, actually control more water than all those millions of people in LA use in a whole year. Yeah, you heard that right.
I mean, that just sounds impossible, right? It raises this massive question, and it's the one we're going to unpack today. How on earth is it possible for two private citizens to get control over so much of what should be a public resource?
So, to get to the bottom of this, we first need to know who we're talking about. Meet Stuart and Linda Resnick. Now, these folks didn't come from a long line of farmers, but wow, have they built an agricultural empire from the ground up.
They run a company you've definitely heard of. It's called the Wonderful Company. And wonderful is one word for it. They're worth billions. They own a staggering 185,000 acres of land. That's like 4 times the size of San Francisco, and I'm willing to bet you've got their stuff in your kitchen right now. We're talking Fiji water, Palm Wonderful, Wonderful pistachios, the list goes on.
Okay, so how did they get all this water? Well, the key, the real foundation of their whole empire, goes back to this one pivotal and pretty secretive deal that went down way back in 1994.
And to understand that deal, you have to know about something called the Kern Water Bank. Now, this wasn't just some local reservoir. This was a huge public project built with taxpayer money. We're talking $74 million. The whole idea was for it to be like a giant public savings account for water, to get California through the tough drought years.
But then in 1994, this secret meeting happens in Monterey. It's Stuart Resnick and a few other big landowners with state water officials. And their argument was basically, hey, the state is dropping the ball on delivering water. So what was their solution? Just give us control of it. And incredibly, the state went for it. Just like that, this huge public asset was handed over, and the Resnicks ended up with a 58% controlling stake.
I mean, just look at the trade here. It seems wild. The state of California gives up a 58% stake in billions of gallons of real, actual water. And what do they get back? The Resnick's junior water rights, which are way less reliable, and something called paper water. That's basically water that exists in a contract, but maybe not in a river, especially when there's a drought. This deal basically changed the rules for California water overnight, with no public input, no legislative vote. It just happened.
So you've got to be asking, why? Why go through all this trouble to get control of a water bank? Well, the answer is fascinating. It connects a farm in California all the way to global politics.
And believe it or not, it all comes down to pistachios and Iran.
So check out this strategy. It was a masterclass, really. First, the US put sanctions on Iran, which happens to be the world's top pistachio producer. Suddenly, no Iranian pistachios in the US. The Resnicks see this huge opening in the market. They take all that land and all that water they now control and go all in on pistachios. They become the biggest producer in the world. But here's the last step. They then reportedly fund think tanks that lobby to keep the sanctions on Iran. It's a brilliant way to protect their new billion-dollar market.
Okay, so a deal this big, it's obviously going to have consequences. It wasn't just some paper transaction. It had a real physical impact on the entire state of California.
And this chart really puts it in perspective. Take a look. Agriculture in California uses about 80% of the state's developed water. 80%! But its contribution to the state's massive economy, its GDP, only about 2%. That is a huge imbalance.
And the cost isn't just economic. It's environmental. We're talking about the ground in the San Joaquin Valley literally sinking because so much groundwater is being pumped out. And you have these incredibly thirsty crops. It takes, over a gallon of water to grow a single almond? On top of all that, during droughts, the Resnicks have actually sold water from that once public water bank back to the public at a premium.
All right, so let's fast forward to more recent times, because this whole situation really came to a head during the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles. The city was in crisis, and people were angry.
As these fires were burning, a lot of people started pointing fingers, accusing the Resnicks of hoarding water that could have been used to fight the blaze. Their company, the Wonderful Company, pushed back hard. They flat out denied it and called the whole thing a viral conspiracy.
So let's be fair and look at both sides of this, based on the source material. On one hand, you have the accusation. Their private control of so much water makes the whole state more vulnerable, especially during fire season. But then you have the official rebuttal. They said, look, LA's water tanks were full. The issue, they argued, wasn't a shortage of water, but the city's old pipes and delivery systems that couldn't get the water where it needed to go fast enough.
And there's more to that side of the story. Turns out the state had just cut over $100 million from its wildfire prevention budget. A huge 117 million-gallon reservoir nearby had been shut down for months. And here's a really interesting legal point. California's constitution actually has a rule against unreasonable water use, which could, in theory, allow the government to step in and take control of private water during a major crisis.
Now, in the wake of all this public anger, the wonderful company did announce a $10 million pledge to help with wildfire relief efforts for the communities that were hit so hard.
So when you put it all together, you've got a secret deal, a brilliant pistachio strategy, and a massive wildfire controversy. It all boils down to this one really fundamental question. It's something we all have to think about. Should water, something we all need to survive, be a privately owned asset up for sale?